Welcome to the Creative Tools Podcast. My name is Ashay, and I'm immensely passionate about using technology for creativity. On this podcast, I talk to various creators about what tools and technology they use to be creative. My guest today is Julianne Bonnet. Julianne is a writer, photographer, and digital artist who draws inspiration from nature and concepts of emotional healing. She holds an MFA in English and creative writing from Mills College, as well as a credential to teach college composition. She can often be found wandering the hiking trails of Santa Cruz County in California, with her camera slung across her back, looking micro for breathtaking moments of quiet discovery. While her photographs almost never have people in them, her photographic art composites are 100% people centered. Hi, Julian. Thanks for visiting my podcast.
Hi, thanks. It's nice to be here.
So let's dive right in. First question: what do you create?
I create what are called photographic composites, which to me means taking elements of existing photographs and removing them from their existing contexts to place them into a new and imagined context.
Oh, nice. So is there like an example that you can talk about? Is something recent that you made?
Well, a simple example would be, and this is controversial, like if a photographer takes a beautiful picture of a mountain, but the sky looks very flat and two-dimensional, some photographers might put a different sky behind that mountain to make it look more dramatic. So that's kind of like the most simplistic idea. Another way of describing it is kind of digital collage. So just kind of taking a bunch of different elements that you might not find in the existing world and just having fun with them.
And when I visited your booth at the festival, you also had some, they were not just photographs, right? They were like some 3D things that I could touch. Is that correct? Am I saying it correctly? Or were there just like 2D composites?
They were 2D composites.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so then let me go to the next question. So I'm a filmmaker, and when I make films, I usually go through three processes. One is pre-production, which is before I even touch a camera or before I even touch a sound recording device. I plan and think about the story. Then the production piece where I get record content, and then the post-production, which is editing and release. So I kind of want to talk about these three things for your creation. So for the pre-creation part, like before you create the composites that you were just talking about, how do you get inspiration for them? How do you record your inspiration? And when you want to create them, how do you retrieve that inspiration?
I think the pre-creation is about as low tech as it gets. I mean, my pre-creation process involves walking alone on the beach or walking through the forest, and we live on 5 acres deep in the redwood forest. So a lot of alone time, a lot of wide open spaces. And I find my background is as a poet. I have an MFA in creative writing. And the process for coming up with poems is much the same. Just have wide open space, let the ideas flow. So that's kind of the pre-creation process. It's just kind of seeing what comes up. And then I just kind of hold them in my memory until I can get to my iPad, and then I just kind of go for it. So that's okay. the pre.
So usually, yeah, but usually what, like for example, if because I make films, I watch a lot of films and I watch a lot of content, and let's say I find some great scene that could be an inspiration for me. A similar thing happens with me as well. Like I try to etch that into my memory, but then when the inspiration hits and when I'm actually creating the film, there could be years in between. right?
Right.
So I have to completely rely on my memory to retrieve the inspiration that hit me many years ago. So do you do any tricks or anything like that to make sure that you don't forget your own inspiration that hit you many years ago?
I think I'm trying right now. My kids I have one that's grown and one that's 16 going on 17, so mostly grown. And so, I'm finding I have more time to do this kind of thing. So generally, if I have an idea, I get very excited about it and I just go create it,
Oh,
right away.
right away.
So yeah, it's just something. And I have this feeling that if I don't, like if I sit on an idea for too long, I'm probably not as excited about it as I should be, and maybe it doesn't deserve to be seen. So
but do you always find resources to make that a reality when the inspiration hits you, or
that's a good question. I mean, no, not always. I mean, part of my creative process involves a collective of photographers that I belong to. So if I add into the pool of photographs I'm allowed to take from the pool of photographs. So for instance, if I have a park bench in, a digital composite, it's just not realistic or practical for me to go, I'm going to go fly to New York City and go to Central Park and take a photo of a park bench. Like that's just not going to happen. So these pools of photographs are very handy for being able to search for things that I'm looking for. That being said, sometimes they don't exist. So something as simple as a park bench might, but I recently had a piece that I wanted to work on that involved a nightstand next to a bed, and I just can't find the right nightstand, and my nightstand is not the right nightstand. And so, I took the closest thing I had or I could find and kind of, made like a crude mock-up of it, and I am still thinking about it. So I guess that's kind of what you're talking about, that I went into Photoshop and kind of was like, this is kind of what I'm thinking, and then put it away. And if I'm able to find or create that nightstand, I know that sounds really stupid to find a picture of a nightstand.
Yeah.
But I deal a lot in dreamscapes. So, that makes sense.
That's one of the challenges that I face too. Like whenever I see something, a picture or a scene or anything like that could be inspirational for me to create something later, I store it, let's say in a folder or on my phone. But then years later, when I actually would love an access to my own inspiration, I kind of have already forgotten that
exactly.
I had stored it somewhere. So so can you talk about this collective again, because this is really interesting and I had never heard about this. So is this like a digital collective where you could upload images and then you could use images from other?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Going back to what you said earlier, I've made notes about things in the past where I'm like, oh my God, this is such a good idea. And then I make notes, I find the note like a year later and I'm like, what is this? I have no idea what I was talking about. And then I'm like, well, in the trash, this great idea. So,
so this collective, is it like a repository of photos online somewhere?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, so it's super great to have that. And, the other challenge in that is like, nobody's going to put their best photos there, right? Those are for sale. So that's the other challenge is you're not going to find the best of the best just working with that. So I think everybody does the best they can with their own images and the images that they can have rights to.
So I was just like browsing internet few days ago and like browsing LinkedIn, and I found this new machine learning thing where you could type text of what you are thinking and it would create an image for you. based on that. So
Oh yeah, that's a real, yeah, that's a big topic right now. The
yeah,
AI image generators,
image
they,
generators.
yeah, they, the way, and I mean, I'm 52, so I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I have a problem not with the image generators, but with people who use them and then call themselves artists,
Yeah, yeah,
because they're being sold to people like create NFTs
yeah.
with and I'm like, who's buying those? Like, and I think sometimes I'm concerned that art really is about, as an artist, it's about process. And a friend recently said, I think that artists would get bored with AI because there's really no process to it. But there's, my brother once described Coldplay as mediocre music for the mediocre masses. and you know, that the same can be said for art, that sometimes some people are drawn to things that are easy. Some people might type 3 words into an AI generator and go, look what I made. And it's like, it might be cool, but like, it's like if I do the AI email writing, they have that too, the
Yeah,
AI
yeah, yeah.
writing software. And if I tell that, write an email saying the project is done, and it says, hi, Bob, I just finished the project. Let me know if you have any questions. Like, did I write that email? No, I didn't. And by the same token, if I say, create an image in the style of Picasso containing a reclined nude woman, the generator is making all the decisions for me,
Yeah, yeah,
where she's placed and all of that. And it's just like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where it's going, but it makes me very nervous.
So I think I kind of look at it as like, I mean, again, I'm a filmmaker, and I there are like generators now. They are not just image generators but video generators as well, with text. And I kind of also got nervous, just like you, when I looked at it. But then I realized, maybe could this be an inspiration tool? Like, okay, as you mentioned about the nightstand thing, like, okay, I am imagining something in my head that could involve this object, and this object. Let me see what this can create, and I can use that as an inspiration for something that I want to actually realize. I may not use the thing that the generator made, but I may use it as a starting point for my thinking. So so I mean,
I'm just thinking, like, in litigation terms, are we then getting into like litigating plagiarizing robots? I don't know. I wouldn't put it past the American legal system. Who owns that,
okay, great. So that's great. So now let's move on to the creation piece. So again, I will tell you what my perspective is and what I have observed while making films, and you tell me if that resonates with you, or your process is completely different. So usually in the creation piece, there are two things that happen. One is, you build a prototype. Like, prototype meaning the creation already gets built in the head first, and then what the next step is, shaping the prototype. So shaping meaning, it's kind of a process of elimination. So like, it's like you are you create an opportunity to make choices on what you should remove from what you have in front of you, and then shape the creation that you already have in your head in a physical form in front of you. So for film, that's what happens. Like, when I am imagining a film, the film is already in my head. Now I have the video, I have the audio data in front of me, and all I have to do is uncover the film that I have in my head
Right.
from the mess that I have in front of me. So do you also feel similar experience, or do you have some other process of thinking about this?
It's interesting because I don't know how you conceive of films, like if you have like a basic storyline or something like that. You know, I mean, I have a background in writing, so if I'm thinking about a story, that's different than the way I would think about a poem. And I think the digital composites for me are essentially digital metaphor or visual metaphor.
Hmm.
So more akin to poetry than to story, and at least the ones that I make. And so there's probably less of a mess involved with that than there would be with a story with multiple characters. And so it's probably less involved of a process in terms of like putting things together and editing. But I do find that I might have an idea and then add to it, which is different than having to take away and kind of pare it down. As a rule, I like to have at least 3 elements that mean something in each piece. Otherwise, it doesn't feel complete to me. And so sometimes I'll have one main element and I'm like, yes. But if I can't find the other 2, it's a no. There's not enough meaning. There's not enough kind of layering of metaphor. So I don't know if that answers the question.
That does. So what I think that's your mental template. Like that's what you have is like, okay, I want 3 elements in my composite, and if they're not there, then it's incomplete. But then my question is, how do you remove the destructive nature of your creation? Like, for example, I will tell you what digital technology has done for creators is offer them an opportunity to make a choice. Like, for example, earlier, if you are painting on canvas, you would paint something, and now if you want to see another variation of it, you have to create another one. Like you have to create another canvas and then paint another stroke of color or something like that. But what digital technology did was, you create something, you copy a version of it, change something, and see if that makes that's better. You copy another version, change something, and now you have a choice to choose from. Like you have options to choose from, right? Like
That's
1,
right.
2, 3, and then that thing is really fast. So
yes.
So do you use any technology to create an opportunity for you to create options, like create an option to make a choice from those options, or you just go and create your physical artifact?
Oh, absolutely. I think, you know, in terms of, you know, creating these in Photoshop, there are a number of different elements. There has to be a compelling background behind the compelling subject. And in order for it to not look too flat, you need some kind of, I guess, what I would call air texturing. So that would be like a fog element or a dusty light element or kind of a spotlight element. And sometimes getting the layering right is the biggest piece of the puzzle. Like, should the light go in front of the subject or behind the subject, and where should the, you know, the dust or the fog go? I find those and those are kind of like preset items that technology affords us. You know, it's like it's not practical to have to create fog. And whatever. So it's not going to add. My fog would be terrible. So yeah, it is really nice to be able to create a layer in Photoshop, try one textured air variation, and then go, oh, no, and then just delete that layer and try another one.
Correct.
So yeah, that's a really helpful thing.
Yeah. And but then if you are doing this in Photoshop, then you are probably creating a layer, then selecting to be invisible, and then create another one, and then selecting toggling the visibility of that layer, and then see the variation between the two. But do you see them side by side, or do you just like see them in sequence?
You know, I keep everything intact. Like I have everything visible all at once.
Oh, okay.
So I'm always working where I can see the composite or the composition as a whole. because sometimes a piece might have, you know, let's say if a piece has 8 photographs that you're working with, including the background, you can still have, you know, even 20 layers or more, because you make adjustments, clipped adjustments to those layers. So you might be adjusting the color or the brightness or something like that, the lighting. That gets a little confusing because some of the layers show up as just white squares and you're like, oh God, which one is that, you know? Yeah, it's easier for me, I think, to see it all as it exists on screen.
Okay. And then has it, when your creation is done, sorry, let me back up a little bit. So you are using Photoshop to make your actual creation, correct? Like, or
yes.
Okay. So once you are satisfied with what you see in front of you, do you just do you just release it as a digital creation, or you print it on some material or something like that, and then use that as your actual creation that you want to release in the world?
So what I usually do is I'll bring it back into Lightroom, and then I'll play around with some filters to kind of like create more of a mood, either with color or lighting or something like that. And then I do leave it as a digital file. So my pieces are on my website, juliannebonnet.com, is hosted by a platform that kind of does automatic fulfillment. So like if somebody wants a metal print, they then send it over to Bay Photo, and Bay Photo takes care of making the metal print and shipping the metal print. And I really like that. That's kind of, you know, the production aspect of it. But everything is digital. I just recently started doing limited editions on cotton rag paper to see how people felt about those. So the jury's out on that still. People seem to really like the metal.
But do you have any kind of like a quality check process or something like that when like someone orders a metal print and then your original creation is this, but then when it actually gets printed on metal, it may look different. So then, so how do you make sure that it looks exactly the way you had imagined it, or that is taken care of like by some other tool or some other mechanism?
I think some other mechanism, you know, it's supposed to be kind of the RGB color process, which then is supposed to ensure that the colors remain fixed, right?
Okay.
But I have heard instances of, you know, Bay Photo is supposed to be extremely good and extremely consistent. But I have a friend who's a nature photographer who said that he's had prints come back that are not exactly right. So if anybody ever had a problem with that, I have no doubt if they contacted me and I contacted Bay Photo, they would fix it. I know they would.
Okay.
So hopefully that would be the exception.
Great.
The rare exception.
I want to go back to the addition of layers thing that you mentioned in Photoshop. So again, if I go back to my filmmaking craft and how I make it, like whenever I make something, let's say I add grain to my film, or I add a vignette to my video, and then once I like it, I basically save it as a template so that I can use it for my other videos and other films as well. So do you also templatize your parts of the creation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, something as simple as a balloon. I had one piece that had a balloon in it, and then I had this other piece where I was like, I think I'm going to put a balloon in it. And then I had another piece that I was like, I think I'm going to put a lot of balloons in it. I don't know, it's like a thing right now. But I was able to take that same balloon and make it different colors, so I didn't have to go through the process of removing the balloon from the background every time. So that's really a handy thing that digital technology affords us.
Right. Great. And have your creations themselves acted as your inspiration for other creations?
Like outside of digital composites?
No. So like, let's say you created something today, and 6 years later, probably the same creation that you created today acted as an inspiration to do something else.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that, you can get, just like if you eat at a restaurant, you're like, oh, I love this. And then you keep eating at that same restaurant. It's kind of the same idea, right? Where you're like, I have one, with a woman in a jar. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to put something else in a jar and then something else in a jar. It's like you kind of get into the balloon rut or the jar rut. But I feel like it's always the psyche trying to work something out, So I think there's always value in just following your imagination and seeing where it takes you.
Nice. Okay, so let's now move our focus to the post-creation activities. So once you are satisfied with your creation, what's your release process looks like? I mean, and by release, I mean, usually the creations are released from the creator, right? So I mean, it doesn't matter who sees it, but it's basically now I'm not going to make any changes to it. So it's like a release from my side. So what's your release process, and what's your distribution and marketing process? Like, how do you use technology in that?
So, the first testing of the waters is usually on Facebook or Instagram, like personal accounts, and seeing how people interact with them. And it's always interesting. The ones that I'm like, oh my God, people are going to love this. They're like, wah, wah, wah. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then the ones that I'm not so sure about, sometimes people go crazy for. So sometimes my immediate community is a good litmus test of kind of the viability of an image. From there, I will go ahead and put them onto my website if I think that they're good enough, and then I'll put them on my Instagram, and go from there. I only started doing this in January, so I'm extremely new to it, and so kind of that post-production piece of it is the piece I'm still trying to figure out, like the marketing piece and that sort of thing.
Do you use any post scheduling tools or something for your Instagram?
Not yet.
Okay.
Again, I think, I'm, being that I'm as old as I am, like Instagram is still not super intuitive to me, but I'm getting better at it. And I was able to attach, I have another website, fairygoatmother.com. And that one is kind of more where people at a lower price point can get like a t-shirt or a mug or, a puzzle, things like that. And so I think the complication is figuring out who to funnel where. So it's kind of like, who do you send to Fairy Goat Mother, and who do you send, to JulianneBonnet.com? And that's a piece I'm still trying to work out as well. Because I'm trying to keep the Julianne Bonnet website as kind of like the higher end pieces, and not like, oh, get a mug, but people are asking for the lower price point items. So it's like you have to cover all bases. So I think very soon I will be using those scheduling features on Instagram.
Okay, great. From my personal experience, whenever I'm making a film or editing a film, sometimes what happens is I feel extremely lonely with my with my creation. It's like, only if someone could help me to navigate through what I'm going through right now. So do you also have similar experiences with your creation? Like, do you feel lonely when you're creating something?
Yeah, I think there are plenty of times where I'm like, help, I need a trusted adult. I need someone to tell me, what do I do? How do I do this? And, you know, my own parents, they, you know, the first thing I ever wanted to be was an artist when I was 5. I came home from kindergarten. I was like, I want to be an artist. And they're like, don't be ridiculous. You'll never make any money at that. And like, just the dream died, you know? And on my 52nd birthday in January, I was like, screw that. I'm just going to do it. And so I just picked up my iPad and started doing it. And I was just like, okay. So, yeah, there are plenty of times that I wish I had kind of like a mentor or somebody who, you know, and I guess like if you have a community of filmmakers, do you have a community of filmmakers?
Well, some like I have a team. It's not just filmmakers, but I have a team of like a cinematographer or a screenwriter. So parts of the filmmaking process, I have like very trusted folks that I surround myself with, so that whenever I have a challenge in thinking, I can just rely on them and then get some advice. Yeah.
But do you feel like when you're feeling lonely, is that kind of in your creative process? Or
yeah, it's like a creative block. Like, okay, whenever I'm editing this, and I mean, most of the times, like it's like if I have to make a creative decision, I don't know whether I'm making the right decision or wrong decision.
Right.
And I wish there could be some help or some guidance on just understanding whether I'm making the right decision or. And then the challenge with creative process, if filmmaking is a team activity, right? And then what happens is, when you are working in a team for a creative project, no one wants to take a creative decision. Okay. because once creative decision is final, right? Like when you make a creative decision, it's going to go in the film, it's going to go in front of the audience, and you don't know whether it's going to succeed or not succeed.
Right.
So that pressure of making the creative decision is always on me, because I'm the director. and I'm like, okay, I am confident about this, but I probably know what I don't want. I don't know what I want. So that in that sense, I really feel lonely sometimes, and I wish I had some companionship or a companion to help me with this. And
I think that for filmmaking, I mean, it's just, you know, making a film is so much more of an involved process than making a single image. You know, you know, if one of my images biffs it, I can just delete it from my website and be like, well, that didn't work out. But for a film, it's like if you're making one decision that can alter the whole viewing experience, that's a little different, you know.
Yeah.
I did have a guy come up to me, I think it was at the Santa Clara Art and Wine Festival, and he was looking at one of my images, and he basically was telling me that if I removed everything about it that was meaningful and just left the background, it would be perfect.
Oh.
And I was like, thank you, you can leave now. You know, I was just like, why are you saying that to me? It was like, it was just so, I mean, I couldn't even get insulted about it. It was so invalidating, you know? And I was like, well, I'm just going to have another glass of wine and just move on with my day, you know? I mean, I used to be a soap maker, and people would come up to my booth and they'd be like, I only use Dove. I'm like, why are you telling me that? Like, you don't have to buy my soap, but just go away, you know?
That's the fun part about art and creations in general, is like you have no clue how people are going to respond to your creation, right?
Exactly.
So usually, like earlier, I used to be very wary of the fact that, okay, if I make this, like, how will people react? How will people react to this? But I'm like, now it's like as I said, like the release process for the creation is completely dependent on me. Like I have a bar, I'm meeting the bar in my creation, and I'm releasing it. Now, whether it gets watched, it gets thrown away, I mean, I don't care, because I'm satisfied.
That's right. I mean, it's a lot like having kids. It's like they say, you know, at some point you have to release them into the world. And hope that you did your job well enough that they become functioning members of society, you know? And sometimes you look at them and you're like, well, okay, maybe I could have done that a little better, but you know, it's already done. So there you go.
So yeah, in the interest of time, let me move on to the next question.
Okay.
So what is the biggest challenge you face in your creation process?
I think, you know, the how to get the images out to more people is definitely the biggest challenge, and that's the piece that I think a lot of artists struggle with. You know, what I'm learning is that you not only have to be good at your art, but you have to be good at the business side as well. So, you know, you can't be creating in a vacuum. Just like if you make films, a lot of people in my creative writing workshops in college, you know, if someone got some negative critique about something, they go, well, I wrote it for myself. It's like, well, then why are you workshopping it? You know what I mean? It's like there's no point in creating if there's not going to be an audience for what you've created. Like I think that's the whole point of it, is that art of any kind is meant to be shared. So I think that's the biggest challenge right now is knowing how to do that. Just get the stuff out there. So I'm muddling through it. I've got open studios for Santa Cruz County this weekend. I'm doing the art and wine festivals and that kind of thing. And I'm confident I will figure it out, but I haven't yet.
Great. Okay. And what is your vision for your creations? Like, where do you want to go with your creations?
I think I want to just keep getting better at it. I want to exercise my imagination. I want to get better at using the tools. And just, I think that's my main goal. But I think the most amazing piece of what I've been doing over the past 9 months is that when a person connects, like really, really connects with an image, and how moved they can be when they really get it and relate to what they're seeing. I'm starting to think that I might want to take it into a little bit of a mental health direction. So I have 6 images that are being published in November in a magazine called Spoony Press, and it's actually for people who struggle with mental health issues and chronic illness. And a lot of my pieces are about emotional and psychological healing. So if there's a way that I can make people feel understood, then I'm doing it not just for me, but I'm kind of contributing to society as well. And I think that's maybe my greater purpose.
Great. Okay. So thanks a lot, Julianne, for visiting my podcast. It was really, really great talking with you.
Thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in. If you are a creator, I would love to talk with you. Please connect with me through my website or social media. See you in the next episode.